All right, welcome. Today we're diving into a really fascinating legal puzzle from the 1930s in what was then Ceylon. The case is called Sultan versus Peiris, and it all revolves around this one document, a deed of gift that was such a paradox, it actually sparked a clash between two entire legal systems.
So let me ask you this. Can you give something away completely, absolutely, but at the same time, keep all the good stuff for yourself for the rest of your life? I know, it sounds like a riddle, right? But this was the very real problem that the courts had to solve in this case. Let's get into it.
Our story kicks off way back on August 15th, 1913 in Colombo. A single piece of paper, this deed of gift, set a legal battle in motion that would take almost 20 years to finally figure out.
And that's because this isn't just about some dusty old law books. At its heart, it's really a family story. You've got a wealthy uncle who's trying to do right by his nephews, to set them up for the future. But this one, very confusing document he wrote threatened to blow the whole plan up.
So let's meet the key players. First, we have Sultan. He's a successful man, well off, but with no children of his own. So he decides he's going to gift all his valuable house properties to his two nephews, Abdulkader and Udman. I mean, on the surface, it's an incredibly generous thing to do.
And when you look at the actual language in the deed, Sultan is super specific. He says the gift is inter vivos, which is just a fancy legal way of saying it's made between the living, so it's not part of a will. And then he calls it absolute and irrevocable. Now that's really strong wording. It's meant to signal that he's transferring ownership right now and for good.
And look, if the story stopped right there, we wouldn't even be talking about it. But of course it didn't. Buried inside that absolute and irrevocable gift was a catch. A single clause that just threw a wrench in the whole thing.
And here it is. This is the big catch. After giving everything away, Sultan writes that he's keeping for himself, for his entire life, the full and unfettered right to take all the rent, all the profits, all the income from those properties. So in other words, he still gets all the benefits of owning the places. Which brings us right back to that central puzzle. How can both of these things be true at the same time? Is it really a gift if the person getting it doesn't actually see a penny of benefit until the giver passes away? This is the massive contradiction the court had to somehow make sense of.
So, this is where we get to the real legal battlefield. The reason this was so confusing is that in Ceylon at the time, there were two different legal systems that could potentially apply to a gift like this one. And you guessed it, their rules were in total conflict with each other.
Okay, so check this out. On one side, you have Muslim law, which handled personal matters for Muslims. Under this system, for a gift to be valid, the giver has to completely, 100%, hand over possession, no strings attached. But then you have Roman Dutch law, which was the general law of the land. It's a lot more flexible. It totally allows a person to give property away while keeping what's called a life interest, basically the right to use and enjoy it until they die. The deed was trying to have its cake and eat it too.
And that idea, delivery of possession, is really the key to everything. Under Muslim law, this isn't just some technicality. It's fundamental. The donor has to completely give up control. They have to, metaphorically, take their hand off the property for good. And well, keeping the right to collect all the rent is pretty much the definition of not taking your hand off it.
So, because the document itself was so contradictory, the court basically had to become a team of detectives. They had to comb through every single word to figure out what Sultan was actually trying to do. Which rule book was he trying to play by?
And honestly, the clues pointing toward Muslim law were pretty strong. For starters, everyone involved, the donor, the nephews, they were all Muslim. The phrase absolute and irrevocable sounds like it was lifted right out of the playbook for an immediate transfer under Muslim law. And maybe the biggest clue of all, there was a penalty clause that said if one of the nephews left the Islamic faith, he'd lose his share. The guy was clearly thinking and acting within his own cultural and religious framework.
He even went so far as to add this line, saying that he's physically handing them the deed and other documents for the specific purpose of vesting the legal title in them immediately. This shows he knew he had to prove some sort of transfer took place. He just, mistakenly thought that handing over a stack of papers was enough to satisfy the law.
But this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If every sign points to him trying to make a gift under Muslim law, why on earth would he include the one clause that would automatically kill the whole deal under that very same system? Was it just a simple mistake? Did his lawyers get it wrong? Or was he trying to pull off something else entirely?
Now, just to make things even messier, the lawyers brought up another case,
A very recent one, actually. They argue that this other decision, a case called Weerasethra v. Peiris, held the secret to saving Sultan's gift from failing.
Their argument was pretty slick, you have to admit. They basically said, hey, look, if this gift doesn't work under the super strict rules of Muslim law, no problem. The court should just switch tracks and judge it by the rules of Roman Dutch law instead, because under those rules, the reservation clause would be totally fine and the gift would be valid. And they pointed to the Weerasethra case as the legal precedent for doing just that.
But the court decided to take a closer look. And when they did, as you can see here, the two documents were just worlds apart. The gift in that other case was explicitly revocable. The donor could take it back, and it was only supposed to happen after he died. Sultan's deed, on the other hand, was meant to be permanent and immediate.
So what the court figured out was that the Weerasethra case wasn't really about a failed gift. It was about a totally different legal instrument, a settlement, which is much more like a will that only kicks in after you die. The donor in that case never intended to give anything away while he was alive, but Sultan clearly did. The two cases were apples and oranges. That precedent just didn't apply here.
Okay, so with that other case thrown out, the court was right back where it started, staring at this one confusing document. After weighing the deed, the two clashing legal systems, and the donor's contradictory choices, it was finally time to make a decision.
And the court's logic was actually very clear and methodical. First, they looked at the evidence and concluded that Sultan's main intention was to make a gift under Muslim law. Okay, step one. So, step two. They had to test that gift against the rules of that system. And what did they find? It failed. Specifically, it failed on that crucial test of delivery of possession, all because Sultan kept the rents for himself. So the only logical conclusion they could come to was that the entire gift was invalid. And this quote from the Chief Justice at the time just sums it up perfectly. He's basically saying, yeah, we see what Sultan wanted to do, we get his intention, but in the end, he just didn't do it correctly. And as the judge points out, this kind of thing is actually a common enough event. People's good intentions don't always line up with what the law demands.
And that right there is the big takeaway. The court flat out refused to bend the rules or swap legal systems just to save the gift. The integrity of the law itself was more important. The principle was clear. If you choose to operate under one set of rules, you have to follow all of them. You can't just mix and match to get the result you want. Sultan tried to make a Muslim law gift with a Roman Dutch law feature, and the court said, nope, those two things just don't go together.
In the end, this whole case leaves us with a really powerful question about how the law works. What's more important, what someone clearly meant to do, or the precise technical way they went about doing it? In this instance, the court came down on the side of the rules. The rules of the game had to be followed, even if it meant the player's intended move didn't count. It's a powerful reminder that in the world of law, how you do something can be every bit as important as why you do it.